Councilor. Today is Tuesday, May 24th, and we're glad to be here this morning with my favorite department, Boston Centers for Youth and Family. I want to welcome you. I'd like to remind folks that this is a public hearing. It's being recorded and broadcast both on Comcast Channel 8 and RCN Channel 82. I'd ask folks to silence any electronic devices. At the conclusion of the departmental presentation and questions and answers from my colleagues, we will take public testimony. There are sign-in sheets to my left by the front door. Please state your name, affiliation, and residence, and if you wouldn't mind keeping your comments brief so that we can hear all concerns and comments. We are here regarding docket. I'm sorry, excuse me, I have the wrong docket. Take two. So dockets 0525 through 0527, 0537, and 0543. Orders for the fiscal year 17 operating budget, including annual appropriation and tax order, annual appropriation for the school department, appropriation for other post-employment benefits, appropriation for certain park improvements, and appropriation for certain bridge projects. Dockets 0528 through 0532, 0534 through 0536, and 0538 through 0542. Orders for the fiscal year 17 capital budget, including loan orders and appropriation amending previous loan orders and lease and purchase agreements. I'm going to introduce my colleagues in order of their arrival. At-large City Councilor from South Boston, Michael Flaherty, to my right. Councilor Sal Lamartina, to my left. District Councilor Tim McCarthy, District City Councilor Andrea Campbell, and District Councilor Bill Linehan. Let me again welcome you, Will.
Thank you.
And your great team here. I've known Chris for many, many years. I worked for the department from 87 to 93. Yeah, it's a long time ago. And had a great experience, and I see some very familiar faces up here. I want to say hi and keep up the great work, everyone. And with that, let me now hand it over to Will and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Tiamo, for this morning. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present BCYF's FY17 budget. I'd like to introduce the BCYF staff who have joined me on the floor here today. No stranger, Christopher Binder, who's now the Deputy Commissioner of Programming, and Michael Saprizio, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Administration and Finance. We also have a number of BCYF staff in the gallery, and I'm glad that they can be here today with me and be a part of this process. I'm also honored to be here before you today also as the new Commissioner of BCYF. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge Chris Binder for his service as Interim Director of BCYF for the past 2.5 years. Chris's experience and guidance has been invaluable to me as I've been settling into this new position. But Chris and I have a long work history that stems over 20 years ago, both working on these streets and walking the beat, and at the same time trying to change as many lives as possible. So we're no strangers to each other. So he's actually a great compliment to me, and I'm a great compliment to him when it comes to our raw leadership style. I also want to thank Mayor Walsh for his confidence in me and for his in supporting me as I take on this new role in BCYF and as we begin to embark on some very important work. But my route here was not one, was a traditional route to get to where I'm at today. I've been system involved since I was a very young age, from the ages of 11 to about 13. By the time I was 14, I was a high school dropout. By the time I was 15 and 16, I had been stabbed twice and shot once. And before my late teen years, I was incarcerated to a 10-year mandatory sentence on the war on drug bill. And so I grew up in a very systematic place. At the age of 20, and I was watching the news one night in my 6x9 cell, I would hear the news report about a young man opening fire on 2 Boston police officers with a 12-gauge Mossberg shotgun. That young man would be my younger brother, my sibling. And it's through that tragedy that I began to question my life. But most important, the reason I changed my life was because when I got on the phone call on the receiver and I spoke to my mother, the only words she shouted to me was that she expected this from me, that she expected me to die. And so I chose that in order to honor my brother's life, I was going to make a commitment to kind of savage my life. And the only way I found that I was able to do that was through service. When I fast forward in 1995, when I come back out to the harsh realities of what it is to have an ex-con as a title. I come back to a community that now doesn't want me. I come back out as a homeless person because BHA had told my mother that if I spent one night in her house, they will revoke her Section 8 certificate. I was very blessed that I had a gentleman by the name of Chops Porter, the late Chops Porter, who instead of taking the shoe tactic that everybody was taking to shoo Will Morales away, chose to embrace me and began to put me on a path to think about youth work and about reaching out to young people and to think about the difference that I can make in the life of others. And because of him, I was able to quickly, within 21 months after being released from prison, become the teen center director at the Eggleston Square YMCA. Had a career at the Y for about 10 years, went off to Youth Enrichment Services, which actually was one of the original YAC programs by the late Richard Williams. And then at the same time, catapulted and joined Jackie Jenkins Scott as her senior director of community partnerships and programs before I came back to the Y to save the neighborhood Y that was slated to be closed by the YMCA of Greater Boston. And so when I was asked about looking at this position and taking this opportunity, I saw an opportunity not because this institution is busted. If anything, it's bursting to grow, bursting to be more. And so I knew that bringing my skill sets and working with these 2 fine gentlemen to each of my side and with this great team at BCYF, I saw an incredible opportunity to really do something more for this community. A very long time ago, I made a personal statement to be the person that wasn't there for me. And that's what I try to be for everyone that I come in contact with. And BCYF provides me the opportunity to do that for everybody from the womb to the tomb. And so I'm hoping that with the support of the mayor, of the city, that we'll be able to do some incredible programming, but most importantly, that we'll be able to transform lives for the betterment of the city and for all. When we look at our programming, as I jump forward, and we look at our programming highlights, last summer we launched the Adventure Girls program to provide girls with the opportunity to experience all kinds of outdoor activities. We also increased the number of times we offered our Swim for Safety program, which provides free swim lessons to youth, adults by offering it 2 times this year. Over 100 people have learned to swim for free through the program this year. We're currently working with the United Way to launch the Youth Ventures program, which is teaching teens at 20 BCYF sites entrepreneurial skills, from ideas to business plans to operation. In operations, we have created a team made up of members of BCYF staff to support all centers with special focus on underperforming ones. This center support team identifies existing strengths and areas in need of improvement and works with staff at the centers to build on strengths and address weaknesses, ensuring that all BCYF centers provide the best possible service to our constituents. We have begun meetings to work on updating memorandums of agreements with the Boston Public Schools to help strengthen and define the partnership. Over half of our community centers are located in BPS buildings. We have worked closely with the City of Boston Law Department to draft a memorandum of agreement between BCYF and local community center councils that we hope to implement in the near future. This MOA will help address inconsistencies across the sites and help define the role and responsibility of site councils. We have streamlined the hours of operations at 2 school-based centers as a pilot in FY16. Our review of the school-based centers found that they are open early mornings to late evenings, stretching staff thin over many hours, while the key programming hours in school-based buildings are from 1 to 9. We were able to change the hours at 2 centers while keeping a supervisor on site at all times, and plan to do that at other centers. This change will add value to our participants, it will add value to our neighborhoods, but it will add value to our staff, who at times could be better utilized. You can't be a human service practitioner if you don't come in contact with enough humans to kind of do your work. We've offered more access to city services in BCYF facilities by developing intentional strategic partnerships across city departments. This has allowed us to expand our offerings while making city services more accessible to constituents in their own neighborhoods. The Elderly Commission, the Boston Police Department, the Office of Women Advancement, the Office of Emergency Management, and City Hall to Go are several of the departments we are working with currently now to expand their programming and expand their services into our facilities. In the areas of staff development and training, we've provided customer service training to all our BCYF staff in fiscal year 17. Customer service continues to be a priority at BCYF. Staff last went through a department-wide training during BCYF Academy several years ago. We created and implemented a departmental onboarding process. The process will explain our culture, align expectations and performances, and provide tools to be successful, assimilated into the new employee position. We conducted our first session just this month. Our street workers are utilizing a new case management system to allow them to better track clients and have each receive 13 hours of training to date on the system and case management. Under marketing and communications in FY16 today, we have gained over 500 Twitter followers and over 500 new Facebook fans. We are building on this momentum through our cross-platform campaign, such as promoting summer programming opportunities and also incorporating new platforms for BCYF. We have been working to ready our content to migrate to the new Cobb website, City of Boston website, creating new content for this site, and working with the redesign team on related topic pages to make it easier for people to find the information they need on our website. Resource development, working with the foundation for BCYF, we were able to increase the revenue raised at our annual fundraiser, the Hobnob, to $253,000. That was a 66% increase from the previous year, all of which goes back into our centers to support crucial programming. We've identified and secured many new sponsors over the course of the year, including the United Way, who's partnering with us around BCYF for the Youth Ventures Program, and are also exploring and helping us revamp and repurpose the Mayor's Youth Council space that's located here in this City Hall to create a teen-friendly space so that our teens can have their own place at City Hall that they can hang and connect, but most importantly, have access to each and every one of us. Looking forward, we will streamline center hours and expand evening weekend hours. Our plan will enable 5 centers to operate 7 days a week. 17 centers will operate 6 days a week, and expanding evening and weekend hours for all our 28 centers. This shift in operating hours and staffing will allow us to create a dedicated senior center in Grove Hall. While we have senior programming across our various sites throughout the city, we only have one dedicated senior center, the Golden Age Center in Charlestown. We will dedicate the BCYF Grove Hall Community Center as a second senior center in the community that has both requested this and has a need for a dedicated senior space for that community. We will continue to create regular opportunities for constituents to come into our facility in order to provide feedback and learn about programs and activities that exist through BCYF forums. These forums will enable BCYF to partner with other city departments to truly establish our community centers as hubs for our neighborhoods. We will use the launch of the redesigned City of Boston website as a starting point to increase not only the amount of information we share about center programming and events online, but also to improve the quality and accessibility of this information. We will implement citywide peer leadership programs, training young people ages 14 to 19 who would serve as foundations for promoting our teen programs and better engaging teens across the city. They will serve as positive role models for other youth, modeling healthy choices and providing information in their day-to-day interactions. Thank you for giving me this opportunity with you today. It's an honor to be working with the mayor and alongside this city council, a city council that is committed to creating transformative relationships. I look forward to discussing our proposed FY17 budget with you now.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome.
Thank you.
And also, what an inspiring story and perspective that you bring to this position, because as I mentioned in the opening, I started out my career with the city as a youth outreach worker for the youth outreach program. And I guess maybe I'll start with that, because you're looking into a peer leadership model again. I shouldn't say again, but it is again, because that's where I started. It was a peer leadership program. I thought it was a great model then to engage, especially at-risk youth in our neighborhoods. And I worked with some really great folks back in those days, including Chris, as you mentioned earlier. So how are you going about implementing this peer leadership program, and what's the model kind of look like?
Chris, you want to jump?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for allowing me to be here today, and so great to see many of you.
And Chris, thank you for your longtime service, as the commissioner noted earlier. Longtime service, great friend, great advocate. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know, we all know how important youth are in terms of addressing issues across this city. You know, as smart as we are, I think the smartest thing we know is that we need to rely on young people to transform lives. And, you know, one of the things that we're looking to do here at Boston Center's Youth and Families is reinvent something that we've had in the past, our peer leadership program. And the hope is that we're able to take advantage of our 35 spaces across the city to engage youth to help us better serve their needs. We just recently created this teen engagement campaign 2 years ago, and one of the things that we did when we did that re-engagement campaign was we created this youth advisory committee, which has been great. The youth advisory committee has helped us, has helped support our administrative staff in terms of supporting teens across the city. We think this is an opportunity to take it one step further. And, you know, as we look at a lot of the issues that young people face, particularly around violence prevention and educating youth around health-related issues and relationship-related topics, no better educator for young people than the teens themselves.
Right.
And, you know, we haven't in the past, I think, taken advantage of their smarts. We haven't taken advantage of all the tools that young people have, and so we're hoping that with this citywide peer leadership program, we're able to have 4 or 5 teams at every one of our sites to help better engage and support programming, activities, and training. But most importantly, you know, as we look to make these centers the places where young people want to come and have a fruitful experience, that we have to have young people helping us engage and plan programming.
So is the department implementing this program? If I remember correctly, the youth outreach program was kind of a contracted program, if I remember correctly. So is this being implemented through the Office of Boston Centers for Youth and Families?
Yes, through Boston Centers Youth and Families.
And do you have the model? Like, if again, my recollection, there was like 8 peer leaders, you know, 4 young ladies, 4 young men, stipends.
We're looking to have 3 to 5, and it'll be stipends.
Right, right. I think it is a good model to engage, especially at-risk youth, especially if you pick the right peer leaders.
Yes.
So I applaud your efforts there. Let me acknowledge that we've been joined since your opening by my 2 friends from Dorchester, District City Councilor Frank Baker and City Councilor at Large Anissa Sabi George, and my friend from Back Bay, Josh Zakem.
Right.
So it looks like you're pretty much level funded, a very slight increase. Can you walk me through the employees and the impact of level funding on the department?
Yeah, thank you, Council. So really what we're doing is a lot of the initiatives that the Commissioner laid out in his opening statement are being done without increase, as you mentioned, Councilor. No increase in funding. We're able to do what we needed to do by different sorts of efficiencies at different staffing levels and moving some position redundancies around to still be able to operate within the same budget that we have. I think it's just a small small increase due to collective bargaining increases and things like that. So we're really looking to, you know, we're going to do what we need to do with what we have. There's not really many, as you mentioned, there is some movement of a little bit of money with regards to permanent employees, and that's just to reflect more accurately where we're spending our money, to be a little bit more transparent on where money's being spent, and that's kind of a practice that's been happening throughout the city to be a little more accurate with our budgeting. So some money was moved due to the fact it wasn't really necessary in permanent employees and moved down to a place where we kind of needed it down to, some of it went to contracted services. So that's kind of just kind of keeping the budget true to what our spendings looked like over the past couple of years. But really, like you said, it's pretty level funded. There isn't much movement other than the issue that I just mentioned around permanent employees, and really just there's some savings also around utilities due to some better rates that the city's been able to achieve, along with consumption that we've been able to improve to cut back the utilities a little bit. But as you mentioned, it's pretty level funded. It's other than permanent employees, utilities, and the contracted services, we're looking to do a lot of these this major initiative around the hours with what we have.
Which
just
makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, kids are in school for most of, you know, September through June for most. And, you know, it's kind of, if you bring them in before that, it's like, what are they doing? No one's there. You mentioned, Mike, contracted services, which went up somewhat significantly, almost $500,000. Where is that going?
Yeah, so a large portion of that that's where we pay for all the facilities repairs. So a lot of that is pool costs, building repairs, things of that nature that arise quite often with some of our, you know, we have 35 sites, not all of which are standalones, but a lot of repairs that we do over a course of a year. But also our cleaning contract comes out of there, and a couple of some pool supplies regarding like the CO2 tanks and things like that. There's some contracts we have to provide some of the pool chemicals and things like that. And also some of the contracted services we have with some outside nonprofits that receive some funding from us. That also comes out of there.
Okay. Because it is quite, you know, it's probably a 30-something% increase from FY16, which was 1.1 million, to 1.6 million. And just wondering, like, did a new facility come online, or that's quite a significant increase, I think, in that line. But if you want to get back to me on that.
Yeah, we can definitely get back to it. But I think also, like I said, I think it's not that we haven't needed it in the past. I think that what it is it's just showing that that's where the need has been, and not so much in permanent employees. So we moved it to where we actually needed it. Right. And like I said, I've seen the contracted services getting hit very heavy this year. So we could definitely use the additional. I think we've just kind of we're trying to be a little more transparent around where our money is, and we know that the contracted services line is in need of it. And the permanent employees, we've shown kind of historically that we've had more than we've needed, so we've shifted that money. Because like I said, we've had our fair share of facilities repairs, and it gets quite costly.
Right. Yeah. And I know the Jackson man could use some serious repairs. Put that plug in now.
Also, just to add, the summer fund grants, which used to be in the other line, is now in that line item as well.
Right.
So it's moved over to 529.
Yeah,
okay, great. My time's up. Councilor Flaherty. I do time myself.
Good morning, Commissioner. Great to see you, and obviously best of luck and congratulations in your new position. As I mentioned at the onset prior to the meeting, that you inherited a great team on both sides of you, as well as folks in the gallery that work extremely hard. I actually even see one of my Little League coaches, Mikey Farmer, there, that has been a longtime supporter of our community centers, and I've learned a great deal from him over the years. Not just in the neighborhood, but as it pertains to the role that community centers play in our neighborhoods as it's played in your life, and I know in Chris's life and in Mike's life. So I want to touch base on a couple things. Community centers for at least a handful, or 4 or 5, have been arguably privatized. There's a creative public-private partnership that exists. Orchard Gardens, Stretch Walsh Community Center, the Mel Stillman Tennis Center, and the Johnson Community Center. And with that has its fair share of issues, particularly from community residents that kind of feel that they're being shut out from those facilities. So I guess I want to ask, like, what is the need for those public-private partnerships? What percentage of the financial burden, utilities, liability insurance, maintenance and repairs go along with whatever contracts we have with these outside entities? And how are we ensuring that the proper background checks, Corey and Story checks are being done on those employees under their domain? And also, how are we ensuring community access? Your opening statement talked a lot about community and access, and what we're hearing from certain parts of our city is that some people feel that because of that public-private partnership, that community center doesn't really feel like it's their own anymore. And so, again, there's got to be a reason for it. I'd like to know what the reason is, but more importantly, how are we ensuring that they're picking up some of these costs? They're allowing community residents to still feel part of that community center community, and also on the background check side, we have some of our most vulnerable residents that are in our community centers, and making sure that we're staying on Corey and Story checks on a regular basis, not just when they get employed, and then 6 months later or 2 years later they pick up an offense, or 7 years later. We need to kind of continually do that, very much like our schools as well. So you have the floor on the public-private partnerships.
Well, I'm still new, so the math part I'll left to Mike Saprizio after I finish my comment real quick. But I can tell you that I was there at the beginning. I was at Wheelock College taking the matter hunt from the city.
Gotcha.
And now I'm in a predicament that I'm probably taking it back for the city. So I'm the guy kind of stuck in the middle. But one of the things that we did was to kind of look at and sort of assess that a little bit. I mean, day 2 on my job, it's the Boston Globe article on the consolidated sites and what came out from the Finance Commission. So this need to sort of try to fix what wasn't sort of put in place, and not to blame anyone or anything. I think that when we decided to go into these consolidated sites, it was such a new thing that people just didn't think about, what do you catch? What do you need to kind of put in place to make sure it protects both the city, but at the same time, it continues to provide programming for that neighborhood as well. And, one of the things that I care about is that one of my visions is to become also known as the center of partnerships, and that we have to make sure that those partnerships are opening those doors and making sure that they're serving that constituent base, that it's not only about the needs of that organization, but at the same time that organization is going to be a very family-friendly opening, kind of bringing everybody in. And so we actually had the opportunity to kind of visit them and kind of talk to them. One of the things that we are doing now to sort of remedy what wasn't done in the past is begin to issue some new RFPs that speaks to those guidelines about taking on the utility costs, to talk about the wear and tear costs that they can actually take on. I mean, we are still going to be responsible for some costs, the infrastructure costs, because, of course, we don't want nobody to go out there and get on a roof and start fixing a roof on our behalf and then doesn't do it right, and it caves in, and it ends up being sort of a liability to the city. But we are asking these organizations to really look at how they query, how they screen, what kind of programming that they're doing, and most importantly, what we're going to ask for them more frequently is community impact reports to let us know how they're allowing the community to use that building. I mean, if I'm going to ask my team to make sure that we're going to operate not only in communities, that we're going to operate for communities, I'm expecting that from our consolidated partners. And Mike can probably speak a little bit to the math and the dollars and so forth.
Yeah, so Council, we're really working hard, and over the past several months, as the Commissioner mentioned, really working to tighten up the contracts we have in place with these user groups, making sure that we go through the appropriate RFP process to find the successful proposer, the most advantageous proposal for what our needs are as a city department, to make sure that the main goal of keeping these facilities open to the community and maintain community access remains, and all that is spelled out in the RFP, as well as we've also executed short-term MOUs with all of these partners to make sure that in the meantime we have language in place that makes sure that all these things are done. It provides so that BCYF will conduct the Corey checks for these partners on an annual basis to make sure that those are done annually. It also, as the Commissioner noted, we are in the process, and at Orchard Gardens are very day-to-day on getting those utilities switched over to the user, so that we can realize some savings there. As the Commissioner mentioned, also, as the user group, we're also going to expect more of the user group to do some of those day-to-day repairs with the lines with public facilities and guidelines that we have, because it is still a city building, and making sure that we're keeping that in mind, that, as the Commission discussed about Matterhunt, we could possibly take these facilities back into our network at any point in time. We don't want to get a building back that's in disrepair or isn't usable. So we're very keen and conscious of making sure that they're maintained in the time that they're being used by these other partners. But as I said, RFPs are going out. There's a lot more reporting guidelines in that RFP. In the City of Boston, the law department has been instrumental in making sure that, as well as the auditing office, to make sure that this is done correctly. We have these result in executed contracts of 1 year with 2 options to renew for years. Also, if things can change year to year, we want to make sure that we're in a position that if something changes, we have the flexibility to do that. And again, also, I think getting at some of the community access, this would restrict that if there was any, these users wouldn't be able to rent these facilities. So if the community is looking for access, it's not based on a rental of that facility. So we're trying to tighten up that community access. And again, I think the year-to-year contract renewal allows us to see what they've done in a year and really prove themselves, as the commission mentioned. And if we find as though they're not providing that community access or living up to that part of the contract, then we can very well explore other options.
And in that contract, are they responsible for maintenance and repair and utilities, or is that on us? How's that?
Utilities is completely on the user group. We're working on switching those all over. So that will definitely be on the user group, and we would be responsible for major structural repairs. Again, as the commissioner noted, those aren't something as public buildings, we want to make sure that stuff is done correctly and appropriately. But we will work with the user agency to start to make sure that some of the basic repairs are handled by the group.
Just making sure something's fair and balanced, it makes sense, it's a win-win, but most importantly, that community centers remain accessible to members of the community. So, and the fleet of our buildings in terms of the physical plants, how many total sites and buildings are you responsible for?
We have 35 that are currently in our network. That includes the 2 seasonal outdoor pools. And they also so Orchard would still be ultimately our responsibility. The Johnson, the Walsh, and the Stillman tennis bubble in Charlestown still our responsibility as well.
And how would one get into the capital pipeline if there's capital needs at a particular site between a pool or a gym or a computer room or center? How is that currently? How are the buildings, the 35 properties, currently assessed?
So, I mean, obviously the school-based buildings are through the school department, Boston Public Schools, but our buildings, annually we review our capital plan with the budget office, and we determine kind of what our needs are. We can shuffle that plan around year to year if we need to, if something needs to be fast-tracked or moved forward. But it's usually a year-to-year kind of review as to what goes into the capital 5-year plan.
Good. And then just drawing your attention to the budget, it's line item 51100, emergency employees. Are those our street workers? Are those, you have permanent employees, then you have emergency employees, then you obviously have overtime.
Yeah, emergency employees are all like our seasonal staff.
Okay.
Lifeguards and all seasonal, all emergency would be considered our seasonal staff.
Gotcha. Okay. And then just lastly, which welcome news obviously from communities and families is the expanding of the hours as well as the weekend hours. With that, obviously, it's exciting for families, but it also has creates some apprehension for the workforce, the backbone of Centers for Youth and Family. And I want to see if there's a way to sort of strike a balance where clearly we're expanding the hours and we're including weekend hours, but you have some long-term employees who added tremendous value to our city, to our community centers, have phenomenal relationships, and have, keep kids in school, keep kids off the street, our mentors, our coaches, our teachers, but yet it seems like because we're expanding these hours, like their life has completely been turned upside down because the life that they're accustomed to that works for their family and for their network, because they've been asked to come in different days and earlier and later. And so is there a way to accomplish sort of the expanding hours and the weekend hours and strike a balance? Clearly, there's a need there to hire some new folks who are hired under the guise of, hey, these are your new hours. But for those long-term employees, again, who have added value to our city, is there a way to kind of sort of strike a balance so that we're not completely turning someone's life upside down to accommodate the expanded hours? And again, welcome news. I mean, Centers for Youth and Family should be open for our kids, as late as they possibly can in the evening and on the weekends. But can we accomplish that with maybe hiring sort of almost like a new workforce and allow those that may have 3 years left or 4 years left to kind of, but again, they add tremendous value. How can we accomplish that without completely turning everybody upside down on their head?
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely assess that and look into it. But this is something that's going to be phased. So this doesn't start immediately. It's going to start part in summer, basically, because we may have one site coming on board, which is the Matterhunt. That's going to be, of course, an immediate one, and looking at the Grove Hall Senior Center too as well. But then some of the stuff is going to happen in September. Allow some people also some time to look at how they prepare, how do they adjust. I mean, I'm in the same way too. I'm a father of 5. You know, and how do I get to all the Little League games and, you know, and that one
That's one of the calls I get. I'm sure I can speak for my colleagues. We
Yep.
get those calls because many of the folks here, they're working a second job. They have kids of their own.
Yep.
They talk about the center as, you know, their center, their kids. It's a really big, nice, warm community feel. But when we're changing the hours, which is, again, it's a great thing,
Yep.
I would argue that we should be hiring some new folks. And those new hours are the new employees' hours because it was in the job description. Those are the hours that were described to them when they interviewed for the position. They accepted the position, and sort of those are the hours moving forward. I think that it's been scrambled eggs, and it's a big concern, I think, of mine when you have great people with great relationships, adding great value, who these kids look up to, and they're like family. And all of a sudden now you have an employee, a long-term employee, faced with the decision they either need to completely rework their whole life to keep that job, or they're going to have to move on to something more consistent to the hours that they've been accustomed to for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, maybe even 30 years or more. We don't want to lose sort of that brain power. We don't want to lose that employee. And that's starting to happen. There's a dynamic that's happening while we embrace longer hours and weekends. We're also, we're at a critical point where sort of that human capital side of it needs to be taken into consideration. And I know when you're crunching numbers, it's probably not on the forefront, but I just got to give you the personal side of this, which is you get good people across our city that work in your facilities that do great work, saving lives, mentoring kids, you know, being that parent, that guardian, that big brother, that big sister. And some of these folks are faced with a major life-changing decision that the center that they love, these kids that they love, may not be conducive to those hours and to their families. And I want to raise it. I'm sure, I know I'm getting the calls. I'm sure my colleagues are getting the calls, and it needs to be addressed in this budget process. So if someone can speak to sort of these expanding hours and how we're accommodating that long-term employee and their schedule to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, and Council, just to kind of jump in, I mean, obviously we value very much the dedication and the, you know, the work ethic that our employees have. And as you said, a lot of them are kind of the, you know, our success is based on, you know, them. So we appreciate that. But with that said, as you mentioned, you know, I wish we could, you know, hire a whole new workforce and they get hired under the premise that this is what they don't know any different. This is what they expect. But, you know, in reality, I think that what we have to do is try to work with what we have. I mean, you know, I know that the budget office and there's many other things that request budget money from the city, and you know, we've been grateful for the funding and the support that we've gotten from you, from the council and the mayor and the budget office, and really trying to work with what we have and working with, you know, the chief's office, Health and Human Services, to try to make sure that these hours get expanded. But with that, with working with what we have, it's going to take people, and I agree with you 100%. And like Will said, you know, we're all family guys at this table, and our whole department's made up of family people. And but what it comes down to a lot of the times is we have a lot of direct service staff, not as many supervisors, and really, it's what is the balance where we can make sure that we have supervisory coverage during our hours of operation. And making sure that folks are held accountable, and if there's any issues that arise, there's a supervisor there to handle it, and really just trying to get the most out of our supervisory folks to make sure that, because again, we do trust that they know what they're doing and they're dedicated and that they're going to do the right thing. So it really gets difficult, and we definitely consider that. And like I said, I don't think any one of us want to turn people's life around, but operating in community centers, we're not a 9-to-5 operation by any means, and I'm sure you guys are all aware of that. And it takes weekends, and you know, kids are out of school and families need services on mornings, nights, weekends, weekdays. So we try to do our very best, and you know, as the commissioner noted too, provide as much notice as possible around folks with regards to if we're going to have to make that change in a schedule or things like that. But if the site's expanding, people are going to have their schedules changed, and we'll try to make sure that it's done as efficiently and kind of keeping that side of it in mind as well. But like I said, again, it's just a very difficult exercise, but we will be sure to try to handle that as best as possible, while also making sure that we have what we need staffing wise to operate these facilities in those expanded hours.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Let me acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilor Ayanna Presley, Councilor Sal Amatina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Commissioner. My wife speaks very highly of you.
We work
job
together.
at
You
the
guys. Just
Very highly.
just clear that.
And Chris, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Michael is my neighbor, so. But believe it or not, Commissioner, I started work at the community center in 1980 in East Boston. So this is my 10th year in the council.
Right.
So every time we have a new commissioner, I want to tell you something that we did, and maybe you can implement this. So when I worked at the community centers, we had very few staff. But what we did was we reached out to the neighborhood, and we offer so many programs. So at the harbor side, for example, we would have a cooking class. We would have an Italian class. We would have a sewing class, all these different classes. And the instructors were people from the neighborhood. So they would go down there, teach a course. Those days, I believe, because I taught the course, it was like $30 for 10 weeks. And they would keep 80%, and the school would make 20%. And the biggest excitement for us when I worked at a community center was doing the brochure. So we have a brochure with all the different activities that we would offer the community. I don't see that anymore. And I think that's something that you should look at. I think there's a lot of people that live in the neighborhoods that would be glad to go down there and offer a course to the neighborhoods. And you'll make some money too. And they will too. But on that note, just a little idea. So I'm, you know, and when I was at community centers, I used to teach swimming. So I'm kind of puzzled that we only taught 150 youth and adults for the whole city. So I don't understand that, because is it because we don't have a couple of swimming pools? Is there a swimming pool at every location? I just don't understand that number, because every kid should learn how to swim.
That was just a new program that we did, a Learn to Swim program that was offered only during the week. But we have unbelievable aquatics program.
Yes.
And I actually get excited when I talk about our aquatics program. It really does speak to the diversity of the city. I mean, we have 17 pools spread throughout the city, and you know, Tony and Tony Rosario and Jeff Mackey have done, in my opinion, done a tremendous job in terms of building our aquatics program. We certainly have a lot of work to do, but I think the one thing that we can tell you is that we have, and I don't know what the numbers are, we can get them to you, but we have almost 400 young people who are actually part of our swim program. And the swim program runs from October all the way till March, and it culminates in the City League Championship. And it is one of the most amazing things that you get an opportunity to participate in, where, you know, you have 300 young people who really look like the city of Boston, from, you know, the languages that they speak to, you know, just an amazing day. 1,000 parents and coaches, and just a wonderful experience. And I invite all of you the next time that we have the championship to come out and see it in action. But throughout the year, you know, we're looking to do these Learn to Swims a little bit more, because the one thing that we know here in the city that is the capital of a Bay State, we have to make sure that not only parents are able to swim, but children are able to swim. It is the second leading cause of death across the country. And so it's important that kids growing up in urban environments learn to swim, and we think that you know, one of the things that we try to do is create those opportunities.
Good. That's why the number I was concerned about the number here. We saw 150. Particularly, I know we have 17 pools. Just did not make sense to me. Yeah. And I know that the swim team program, so I'm familiar with the East Boston swim team program. I actually was one of the founders in that in East Boston, and we would get killed by South Boston and Charlestown because they had good swimmers. And but East Boston team is doing pretty well this year. Another concern I have, and I'm very, very happy to hear that you're going to have a dedicated senior center at Grove Hall. So something that really frustrates me is with our seniors, they use our space at the community centers. A lot of time they have to be out of there early because the kids will have to use the space. so they're sharing space. So the dedicated community center is great, but they got to do more than playing bingo. I mean, that's all they play is bingo. There has to be more programs for the seniors. So that's something, Commissioner, if you could talk a little more, what you're going to do at this dedicated senior center. We need to offer at least health and fitness courses for our seniors. Some of them probably don't even eat well. And so can you talk a little about?
Sure. I think that's part about when I mentioned earlier about our partnerships with other city departments and looking at the elderly commissioning, you know what I mean? And saying, what can we do together so that this way, they're also educational based, you know, as when you get older in life, sometimes, you know, when you hear the scares about prescription medication or you hear the fact that exercise can actually weave you off certain medications, you know what I mean? Those things have to be kind of crucial and instrumental. But it's also an opportunity to also tap into their expertise too as well. As you mentioned, some of them are fabulous individuals. I mean, I think that a few weeks ago I met a woman who was actually one of the very first African-American principals in the Boston public school system. She could bring a set of skill sets that can be introduced into that program, and they can create maybe a robaceous program that we may envision, but they can actually take it and implement it. It's also bringing in their skill sets that kind of help develop those things too. It has to be holistic in totality. I've always said that, you know, you're only but a adult once in your life, but you're a child twice. Make sure that your second childhood is more fun than the first one. And so it has to be a facility that they feel like they have control and a say of what happens with the programming. And I know that BCYF staff are looking to kind of work in partnerships also with the seniors, but at the same time also tap the expertise from the Elderly Commission to also bring in the educational and some of the fitness appropriate programs into our centers to do that kind of work. You know, the Charlestown site is an amazing example of what happens when you give seniors a space and what kind of programming they can come up with. So we're going to look to them too as well to also hopefully help inform some of these other sites, but especially the Grove House site, to really get some meat underneath them and get them going.
No, I think it's very important for our seniors. I know Beverly does a great job in Charlestown, but it's not, I mean, she helps them with their medical, you know, doctor's appointments and problems that they have, like the mail, if they can't read a mail, whatever they got. So it's more than that. And I just think that having dedicated senior centers throughout the city is a good thing, and I would do whatever I can. I'm sure that my fellow councilors will do the same thing in regards to making that a reality for all the neighbors. Another thing I think is very important is sports and fitness program. Young people need to learn about sports, and health and fitness. So can you talk a little about what's going on in the community centers in regards to the sports and fitness program? There was a little increase I see this year in the budget.
We agree with you, Councilor, that sports and fitness is critical. As you know, we have our ACES frameworks: arts, civic engagement, education, and sports and fitness. And one of the, I think, strengths of Boston Centers for Youth and Families historically has been its plethora of facilities, particularly as it pertains to sports and fitness. And you know, last year, well, 2 years ago, we the rec department transitioned back to Parks and Rec, and we certainly continue to work closely with them, the Parks and Rec department. But we're also partnering with a lot of external agencies and organizations who provide access to those recreational opportunities, particularly in helping us develop our athletic directors and athletic assistants professionally. But you know, the one thing that we're really trying to do is do some non-traditional sports, you know, things like lacrosse, and partner with Metro Lacrosse Boston, partnering with some of the soccer programs in the city. We've got some golf that's happening in our community centers. So, you know, partnering with the wrestling programs. We're trying to do some non-traditional things, and you know, we do have in some of our spaces, you know, we have fitness centers. Yeah. And we're certainly taking advantage of those fitness centers. The Blackstone has a great space over there in partnership with BU. And what really excites me about that space is that we've been able to bring young people in to do some recreational programming where they don't typically, you know, they're usually thinking about just utilizing the basketball courts, et cetera. And as we started to talk about the senior programming, you know, we're already doing some yoga programming with our seniors, and We're looking to incorporate an aquatics program specifically for seniors citywide. We have them at some of our community centers, specific sites like Curtis Hall, but we want to do it citywide.
Yeah, I think they'll love that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, sports it's a great way
Yeah.
for kids to. It's the carrot.
And I'm
That's the
looking
way
at
you
the
get them in.
fitness.
so.
I mean, even when I talk about offering courses, when I was working at the Harbor side, they offer a weightlifting course fit.
Yeah.
So people pay to learn how to lift weights and stuff. So I think it's a good thing. So I'm really excited about you guys expanding the hours. My philosophy: when all give, all gain, because I know there's some community centers I see overstaffing when they should be doing other things. So I have no problem using your staff how you should be. They should be working and not hanging out. And then just one more thing. You have plans to take the coordinators out of the union, out of the unions and put them in the mayor's office? I don't
We're working with labor relations on it. We can definitely follow up with
Can you
you.
follow up on that?
It's in, yeah.
Some concerns. Other than that, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been joined by District City Councilor Tito Jackson. Councilor McCarthy.
To follow up on Councilor Lamatina's last question, so what is the answer? Because that was one of my questions as well. Are we working to take people out of the union, or are we not?
It's a possibility. I mean, we're working with labor relations. I can't speak on it either way on what the result's going to be, but it's something that's been thrown around for a couple of years. That
How many people and who would it be? Who are you targeting?
it would be 28 people, I believe.
So the people who run the community centers, the directors,
Yes.
because that's the number that.
Yeah.
There's 28 centers, so there's 28 that fits right in there. Okay. So you're working to take those out of the union. That could be problematic, I would think. Right? Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that's out on the floor. We got an answer there. Page 8, you have 356 full-time employees. Page 9, you have 382. What's the real number now? And then how many of those are union and non-union?
What was the number, Counselor? You said
On
356?
page 8, you have 356.3. I still don't understand how we get a 0.3 person, but, and then on page 9, it says 382.5. I rounded.
Yeah, so the FY17 projected, I mean, I think you're getting those weird 3/10 is because we get some part-time folks.
Okay.
So that's why that could come out a little funny, not an even number. But we had the rec transfer last year. The recreation folks went over to Parks and Rec.
Yep.
So that accounts for a little bit of the difference that you see there. But the number that and these are also snapshots in time. The one that as of January 1. So the number that we would be looking at is the 382 for FY17.
So that's how many we have or how many you're hoping to fill?
Well, that's how many we would have, but there's always positions running vacant just for turnover. So that's what we would have. That would kind of be a head count.
Okay. So on page 15, you have a lot of things trending down: arts, civic engagement, education, sports, community center visits, pool visits. What's our strategy to make those arrows turn the other way?
Let me speak to, I think, the question. You know, I think one of the things that we're trying to do, Councilor, is to really be intentional around outreach around a lot of these programs. I think that we realize that in Boston, the demographics have changed tremendously. And the one thing that that the commissioner has instructed us to do is really to start to think about where those non-traditional places and agencies and organizations that we can do a better job in terms of engaging community members. We look at the Office of Neighborhood, ONS, and the Office of New Bostonians, which was recently christened a new name. and these are two departments that we think can be helpful in terms of better engaging our constituencies around what we have known for quite some time, that we're sort of like been a secret, and we shouldn't be a secret, and we want to make sure that our spaces are as accessible as possible, and programming is available, and the constituents in this city know that they have access to them. I think one of our strengths at BCYF is not only we're spread out across the city, but we're affordable, and we have to make sure that we're ensuring that the constituents in our city know that these opportunities exist for them.
Right. I think my own opinion in working with BCYF, way back, as you know, I don't have to tell you my resume, like, 1980 when I was 10 and Sal was working for the BCYF. But, I think, sometimes we focus a lot on the non-traditional, and we're forgetting about our traditional.
Yeah.
I mean, just because a kid isn't in trouble doesn't mean he doesn't need a place to go.
That's right.
And I think sometimes the street workers are such an important program, and that since 1996, when I started working for the Youth Fund, I've been an enormous supporter of the street workers because I know how hard they work, and what they do is so important. But the traditional kids need to be outreached too as well,
right.
all right? Because sometimes we lose that focus. Yes. What's our policy in BCYF for one-day beer and wine licenses for events? Because I get a mixed answer anybody I talk to, whatever community center it is, not even just in my district, but others, where sometimes that's the only hall that could be used for great community events, like Pop Warner or a Little League or whatever. And it's, well, you can't have beer and wine, but you can have beer and wine, but you can't. It depends on what center. Do we have a policy? And if we don't, can we create one?
When you look at the policy for BCYF, it's a citywide beer and wine policy, right? And so we don't have a policy. We do have, we go by the policy that is set forth through licensing. And so we've had community events that have had licenses for beer and wine via the licensing board. We typically do not encourage wine and beer in the spaces, given the families that come through our doors. But we certainly are open to looking at what that beer and wine rules look like.
I think we should, because I can speak specifically to District 5. We don't have a lot of large halls, but and there's a lot of neighborhood organizations that want to have large fundraisers. And as you know, you're working hard to fundraise as well. Well, if you charge a little bit for the hall, I don't want you to get into the hall renting business, but you could certainly, the local events and local people, nonprofits in particular, it could be. I'm confused with what I hear from different people of whether or not we do or we don't. But I know we have events here that sell beer and wine. That's
and Council, I spoke specifically to ONS about that and the concern, and we were throwing that around a little bit because I realized the issue you guys had out in Hyde Park around maybe not having availability and maybe having to even leave the city of Boston in order to have some of these events because you can't have it.
The woman's tea.
But as Chris said, I mean, it's something that we don't take lightly just because of the fact that it's liquor involved, and then also if it's a fundraiser in a city building is another kind of concern to us. So we can work around it. We can, you know what I mean? But those are our concerns that just jump out at us that might give us a little hesitation before we do something like that. But as Chris said, obviously I can't speak for the past. I mean, we definitely don't encourage it at this point would be our stance. But again, if it can be something that we can work around and make sure that it's done correctly and safely and ensure that, it's something we could contemplate.
Yeah, if it's the policy just needs to be written one way or the other. If the answer is no, then the answer is no. I'm not pushing beer and wine on anybody, but I think you're missing the community even getting into your community centers with some of these events that we're passing out. I'll wrap it up, but I'm very concerned about my first question and the answer to that question. So I will stay tuned, as they say.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I also have to acknowledge Chris, who's just been incredible to work with since I got here in January. But look forward to working with you as well, Commissioner. I don't have a lot of questions, just a few. The Adventure Girls program, how many girls are in that, and what's the cost of running that program?
I'm gonna ask Erica. Is Erica up there? Joanne, to speak to our Adventure Girls program.
Awesome, thank you. Well, while Joanne is making her way down, I feel like I'm on The Price is Right. I'll just quickly go to the Mattapan projects that are currently in the pipeline. What's the timeline for those?
Consa, which sites are you specifically referring?
So let me-
Gallivan?
Yes.
Gallivan, okay, sure. So Gallivan, we're looking to get that capital project underway this fall. So it'll kick into gear this fiscal year for renovation.
And you're doing work at the Mattapan as well, is that right?
I think that's a new item. We're doing
Right.
some a new item to the 5-year plan is exterior lights. So that's new to our capital plan this year.
But Gallivan is this fall.
This fall, yep. We're working on arranging with capital planning office on, like I said, taking that offline sometime in the fall for the renovation there.
And then Mattapan is new, so I'm assuming a couple of years out, or?
It could be, but we could move it up if necessary, especially if we come into a place where we're operating the facility again, it may be something we want to address sooner rather than later.
And while we're talking about Mattapan, and I'm sure Councilor McCarthy, because we split Mattapan, I think it's great that Grove Hall is getting a senior center. I think we need more of them. It's one of the biggest things I hear from seniors. Obviously, Mattapan, there's a lot of seniors. Dorchester as well, is they would like to see a space for seniors. So I think then in the next go-around, as we're talking about spaces in which to designate some of our facilities for seniors, Mattapan should definitely be looked at. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
So just to speak a little bit about the Adventure Girl, this is our second year running it. Last year was our first year. We developed the program to give girls an opportunity to get out into the wilderness and experience some of Boston's parks and get a chance to get on the water with them. Last year we had 10 participants, ages 10 to 13, and this year we'll have 18 slots open for girls to participate. So it's a partnership program with YW Boston, so we're very excited. The girls do 2 days a week of workshops, anything from self-esteem, nutrition, health and wellness, and then on Fridays we go on an adventure field trip.
So this year it's 18 girls. Last year was 10
girls.
What's
Yep.
the cost of the program?
It's
Oh,
free
what do we? It's
to
free
City of Boston residents. Yep,
through this partnership with YW Boston.
correct. They're one of our summer partners, and
Okay.
so we're able to run the program free for all the youth participating.
Well, I've heard great things about this program. I think following up on Councilor McCarthy's point on looking at the traditional kids and making sure that we have programming available to them. This program, of course, I see that there's going to be an expansion for boys. Any way in which to increase that, feel free to use the council as an advocacy or a branch to push for that, because I've heard great things. I think there are more young people who want to be involved in this program, who want to be exposed to these type of things, specifically things that take them out of the city of Boston. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Going back to the contracted services, it was mentioned that under that line item, we contract with outside nonprofits. What are those nonprofits?
ADSL, Dorchester Sports League, Project Deep, Smart from the Start, and After School and Beyond.
So just 4?
Yeah.
And do they apply through an RFP process, or, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love ADSL.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's set up through a grant. I'm pretty sure, and they invoice us back for items that are outlined in the grant.
So how long have these 4 agencies or nonprofits received funding?
And it's
if you have to sort of go and get
we'd
back
have to
me,
go
that's fine.
back because
Okay.
it's been in existence for a while. A partnership with the city.
Only reason I ask is obviously we had a our previous hearing on just looking at grants for youth development programming, and it's important. So not looking to sort of take anyone's funding away, but just looking at who receives it, what they do, making sure that organizations that also do great work have access to the limited funding that exists. And I think obviously doing a better job on the city side and on the council side to make sure that we have increased funding for these types of programs that we know to work to keep young people out of the system. So I'll look for follow-up information related to that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
My last question has to do with the street workers, interrupters program and the incredible work they do. But can you talk a little bit about the difference between a street worker and interrupter, the number of folks we have serving in those positions, in the neighborhoods they cover, just a little bit more detail?
Sure. So our street worker program and violence interrupters is led by Sean Webb, who's here.
Yes.
And you know, he's done a tremendous job with incorporating those violence interrupters over the last 2 years. Our street workers and violence interrupters, you know, I think in terms of title, there really isn't a difference in terms of their duties and responsibilities, to be quite honest. We had a grant through OJJDP in which we had what the title violence interrupters, and that title came to be because the grant was based on the Chicago model, in which they have violence interrupters, and we could not use our City of Boston model. We had to use the Chicago model, and so the title came to be violence interrupters because of that. When we transitioned Street Safe staff over to the City of Boston, we made our intention was to enhance our violence interrupters. So our street workers and violence interrupters are out there engaging youth and young adults who don't take advantage of traditional programs. They're often gang involved, court involved, and quite frankly, they're what we call proven risk individuals, at-risk individuals. So they run the scope of, whether it's proven risk, high risk, or at risk. They work, they're on call 24 hours, 7 days out of the week, to build intentional relationships with youth and young adults, sort of hang out, whether they're parks, alleys, corners, etc. Our violence interrupters and street workers, I think, do a tremendous job with, dealing with that population that oftentimes many folks don't have the tools and skills to be able to deal with the population. I guess, when we start thinking about the work of violence interrupters and street workers, we're citywide. I think one of the things that we've been able to do is make it one strategy versus two strategies. I think that we've been intentional about who we engage with, and so rather than being, although we're spread throughout the city, we're able to identify, to work with the 45 gangs who have been identified as, by the Boston Police Department as being the most problems and the most troublesome. However, we work with everyone. So our street workers are assigned to a specific gang, although we're in every neighborhood in the city of Boston. We do take referrals. We are a referral-based program. Most of the clientele that our street workers get is because of their outreach efforts, and they carry a caseload of roughly 15 individuals, which enables them to be more intentional in terms of their efforts to move them along the continuum. I think you might have heard that we recently, for a lot of years, it's been pen to paper in terms of how do we manage our caseloads. We now have a tracking system, efforts to outcomes, which enables us, one, to track the progress of the individuals that are in our caseload, but it also enables us to be able to allocate our resources around deployment better. Our street workers and violence interrupters are trauma-informed, trained. via the Boston Public Health Commission. And, that's important given, the impact that trauma has had on a lot of individuals.
How many workers do you have?
40, we have 45.
45.
Yep.
How many clients do they interact with?
Right now, it's
Roughly.
over 600. Yeah.
And this
So-
tracking system is new. Is it being used now, or is it being developed?
It's being used now.
When did it start being used?
It went live in March, so it's relatively new, but it has already proven its worth. It's really exciting, and I think for us, it's going to enable us to better talk about the work as we can talk about it anecdotally all day long, but it'll be great to be able to actually see it in real time.
My last question is, how are the street workers recruited?
Yeah, so we just like any other position in the city. There's the jobs are posted, and we often based on the applications that we receive, we obviously bring people in and interview them, but we're also always talking to our partners and people in the community, encouraging them to invite those who they may be familiar with to take advantage of the opportunity if they're interested in being a street worker or a violence interrupter.
And my last, I guess, 2 comments. One is, and the only reason I asked about the recruitment piece is I have some residents who have great experiences. I would say the majority of street workers and the work they do. Sean is incredible. He's obviously on the ground doing a lot of different work, and amazing work, hard work. But I have a couple of sort of feedback or residents who are particularly interested in this and looking and encouraging the city to look at how we recruit street workers and the resume in which they come. Understanding, obviously, we're asking them to engage with a certain subset, a certain individual, and to be able to relate with that individual, to have a real conversation, to get things done, and obviously to transform a life. But it doesn't always mean that it has to be someone who maybe comes out of the system. Looking at the diversity of experiences to inform that program, so a young person who we're targeting is exposed to different types of individuals. So I don't know what that looks like, but that's where the sort of questioning was coming from. But I want to thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank you, Chris, for all that you do. Your incredible staff behind me as well. You guys do really incredible work every single day. And we're actually blessed to have such great facilities to be able to use for all kinds of things. So thank you, you and your team, for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Linehan.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And as Sal indicated, he's been connected to BCYF for a long time, and so hasn't the chairman. And you know, I was around when they began community schools, and so BCYF is so much to so many people. Its mission is very broad, and so many people think that their perspective of it is what it should be. So to you, Commissioner, you have your hands full. I've worked very closely with members here, many behind me. I was assigned from the Chief Operating Officer's office to work with BCYF in helping initiate some change. It doesn't go easy. You gave a great presentation. I know that this whole budget was fashioned before you were here. Yeah. And so the people that you have around you are all good. They have enormous experience. Chris himself, I've worked with him forever, and he's done a great job. And he's been a credit to our city, and he walks in all circles. But for your first year, you seem quite capable. I'm glad you shared your story with us. It's important. If I shared mine, I probably wouldn't get elected. But I just, you know, it's a big, big place that is truly perceived in a million different ways of what it should be. The connection to central office, from central office to each and every site is an enormous, even if it's in the Tobin, it's an enormous spread of how people perceive what their jobs are, what they do. I know that a lot of work has been done since I was over there, and that happened to be 10, 12 years ago. And congratulate folks. But just the sheer makeup, how it was designed, it's the only bureaucracy in the city that is grassroots by nature. It started in the community and worked its way up. It became tentacles that became a bureaucracy versus a bureaucracy that sent out tentacles. And so with that, there will always be plenty of discourse and disagreement, and also very parochialism, because each particular center is viewed as its own place, because that's how they were founded. So I just say be cautious, listen as much as you can. Yeah. I'm excited that you're in that position. I wish you the best. Anything I can do to help going forward, I extend my experiences and efforts to you.
Thank you, Councilman.
A couple questions. One was on the FTEs. That number was, you said there was a diminishing in the numbers. I think it went from 392 to 380 something. And you said that was recreation. How many people was that exactly that recreation moved?
It was right around that number, seven.
So it's almost.
Yeah, I think that accounts for pretty much most of the downward shift. Was the transfer of the rec.
So
folks.
It's 82 to well, it was 96 and then 389. When did it happen? In FY?
I think it was into FY16, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So in my experience of 25 years in this city's organization, that community centers continues to change all the time. BCYF, there's always, rec came in, rec goes out. Consolidation, decentralization, you know, all of it. And it continues to happen. So again, I extend whatever experiences I have on behalf of the new commissioner. So I have real concern about what Councilor McCarthy stated, because there are 28 individuals who are union members who manage and operate these community centers, and they're linked to whoever the. Do you still have like geographic coordinators?
Regional operations managers.
Regional operations people, right? And then to central, right? They're not policy people. They're basically those who operate the community center. They get their directives from central. So I say, when we hear this sort of stuff as district city councilors, you can imagine the concern that it would generate, that every member of any community center believes that that community center is theirs in their neighborhood. And to start trying to affect change through a broad-based swath of re-examining all 28 leaders, to me, especially union positions, seems to be something you should tread carefully on. For parks, for community centers, for those that do direct service to young families, I never think the budget's big enough. And so you'll always have an advocate while I'm here to have an increased budget, because there's so much work that needs to be done. Each community center, well, not every community center, but you have how many CBOs that are direct partners, would you call them community councils, that are actually 501c3s?
There's around, I think, just north of 20. There's most sites have one, not all.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, I would say somewhere between 20 and 25.
Right. And collectively, how much money do they generate?
Well, we could probably put our fingers on that, but as you mentioned, they're all independent 501c3, so we'd have to get access to their 990s and compile that number as a aggregate.
I think it's an important number. When I was at Parks, and I was the director of operations and programming was one of the divisions. They had partnerships, and they knew exactly how much money those partnerships brought in. And then we also calculated with in-kind services how much that was generated outside the building. So if you have a $25 million budget and you have 20 agents, and 20 agents are coming up with a $2, $3, $4 million, they could be doing as much as $8 million worth of work. I think that that's real important so that we know what we're getting from community centers as a full entity, because many of the partners are using our buildings, right? They're even the council members are charging fees, and it goes to them. Am I correct? Still does, right? Yeah. So I would weigh in on that sort of stuff before you start talking about 28 leaders with long-standing presence in each community throughout the city. But thank you for what BCYF does, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Baker.
Good morning, William and Mike and Chris. And again, I want to echo what Council Linehan said. Thank you for sharing a little bit of who you are. Takes a lot. I think where I want to jump off is with you, Chris, with the street workers, and I say it every year. You know, we have the street workers, and I'd like you to talk a little more about you know, maybe where they are, what neighborhoods, because I do think, like Michael Hislop's a friend of mine, and a lot of the work that he did, which was outside because people would see him on the street, a lot of the work that he did was in recovery and helping people get help. And I think that if we're to even be able to talk to this situation or be able to be effective as a city, and I know you have training through BPHC, like when are we going to start cross-training these men and women if they're not already? I'm sure if they're out on the street they know enough to get by, but when are we going to start, you know, maybe dedicating some of those people towards the crisis that's going on with the drugs and alcohol, and maybe being a little more proactive to go to the younger kids, and if they're viewed as someone to look up at in these neighborhoods, like when can we start really getting to a point where we have street workers that are on the street that are knowledgeable about this and that can speak to this and talk to young kids that maybe, I don't know, you pick the age, 10, 11, 12, 13. When are we going to start talking to them about the dangers of what's going on in their streets, the dangers that's all around them right now, so we can get in front of this and we're not 16, 17, 18-year-old kids all over the place. I sat with a kid that I, when I was a volunteer at the Little House, which is now closed, I had him from the time he was 11 till he was 15. At 16, he got on heroin. He just got off heroin a year ago, and he detoxed because he died and was in a coma. He detoxed in a coma. So, I mean, when are we going to get to that point, Chris? Are there conversations about it? If you can just speak to that a little bit.
We're already there, Councilor Baker.
Okay.
You know, first of all, Michael Hislop was an amazing.
And I haven't seen him around. Is he gone?
Yeah, he left. He's at another department now.
Oh, okay.
He transitioned out.
Okay.
But you know, we certainly recognize the importance of the work that he did in the recovery community. You know, our street workers, they have a specific duty and responsibility,
right,
as you know, you all know, but we certainly realize the importance of being able to be holistic in our approach, and certainly recognize the need to have a diverse, knowledgeable staff when they're out engaging those youth and young adults who have many different issues that they're facing. And you know, we've been working closely with the Office of Recovery, Jen Tracy, as well as the Public Health Commission and others around a lot of the issues as it pertains to substance abuse and specifically the opioid crisis. And you know, we certainly have had our staff out there along the sort of that sort of triangle over by the hospital where we've seen an increase in activity as it pertains to substance abuse and homelessness, et cetera. So we're certainly recognizing the need to make sure that our staff are trained around many different aspects,
Yeah.
not just around violence. And we've always believed in that. We certainly have to be mindful that they do have a specific role that they play. And oftentimes when we take them away from their group, which they're engaged with individuals and really trying to move them along the continuum, then that means that there's a void there and they're out, it takes them to do something else. And of course, as a public service, no different than, the lights being fixed or potholes in the ground. I believe that our staff have to be responsive to the needs of the citizens of the city. And certainly we have done our due diligence in terms of ensuring that when issues arise that might take them away from their sort of violence prevention lens, that we're able to do that without taking away
and deal with it,
without taking away from the community.
And not that it's on you. I've actually been talking to different groups about down there, specifically Southampton Street, and I think it needs to be more of a people on the street, and for lack of a better term, street workers that are dealing with just that population down there, and then dealing with the 311 system and Jen Tracy's group, so we can, as the city, everybody knows what should be happening in the available programming and being able to identify people. You can't identify people that are on the street from in an office. You have to be out there with them. And I think that's probably a lot more public health than you guys. But I just think that if we're all going at this together, then we hopefully can make a difference. And that's just something that I've been advocating for, and I've talked with Sean about it in the past, that that we need to have people that are at least well versed in what people need.
Yep.
And that's affecting every neighborhood and every corner of the city. Does the Boston Foundation fund their street workers that came over to us?
They do. The workforce that came via Street Safe, I think there was a total of 17. There was a $3.1 million commitment from the Boston Foundation that will take us through FY17.
Okay, and then so will they re-up in 18, or do we have a sense? That's the hope.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
Okay.
I think that as we have incorporated this efforts to outcomes, and I think having the data that proves that it's been a valuable partnership, I think will enable us to make a really good case for sustaining the efforts.
And just a quick comment on the swim program. My kids are part of that swim program. Sometimes I don't necessarily want to go sit in the pool on Friday night for the swim meets, but I do it anyway, and it is a great program. Thanks for talking about that. Mike, can you talk about the Tiny Tots program a little bit? Is there 2 more programs that are half funded from BCYF?
Yeah, Council. So it's Leahy Holleran, it's Roslindale, and it's the Orenburger. Originally there was 4 employees that were
4 employees per
city, 4 altogether. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So there was 1 per site, and there was 1 site that had 2. We recently 1 retired, so we're down to 3 positions. Currently looking to sign an MOA. The councils all have received MOAs to extend the arrangement for another 2 years at the same 50-50 reimbursement. Yep. And the intention is that when those positions open up, that we wouldn't refill them.
Okay, so is that 22,000? Is that person that retired?
Yes.
Okay. My kids were part of that, so I could see the value in there. So I'd like to advocate for that. And also what some other councils had mentioned about the shift in positions, that's a little bit not positions, but taking people that are unionized now out of the union, that may be concerning. Would like to have an offline conversation about that, what the reasoning is.
Absolutely.
What is the city's relationship with Bird Street? Do we have any relationship with them? So they're totally self-funded.
Yeah, they're self-funded. We used to fund a couple of their positions, but no longer. I mean, we partner with them on different, issues. Our street workers in that community, engages over there, but there's no formal funding
Yeah.
relationship.
Okay, because they're having a little bit of a problem this year. If we could have someone have a conversation with them, it might be helpful. A one-time shot in the arm for Bird Street. Chris, maybe if you could reach out there, we could circle back. I want to, and I have to, you know, give the people at the Leahy a shout out. They bring kids to DC. They brought 41 kids to DC last month, you know, and they're constantly bringing them places, and it's more, you know, it's a lot of fun there. There's learning going on there, and you know, again, my kids go there, so I have to give them the shout out. They swim there, they do pottery there. They, like Sal was talking about, I've done cooking classes there. It was more of a talking class. It was a lot. I wasn't cooking so much, more talking. But
I'll teach you.
Michael, can you talk a little bit about the websites, the parent council websites? Why? What is the bone of contention there? What are we trying to do there?
Yeah. So as we talked about, and Council Linehan mentioned about all the local site councils, and really what we found was that we've always advised our staff not to have their own websites, just from accountability standpoint. Very difficult for us to control the content of 20 some odd websites operating under the premise of a City of Boston website. So we've always told our staff, please use the cityofboston.gov/BCYF. For any material you want to get out, we have a centralized Twitter account, Facebook account. It's just really about accountability and, again, making sure that nothing inappropriate goes out or things like that that could put the city at a liability being framed as a City of Boston website. So we came across some council websites that, for all intents and purposes, when you looked at it, thought it was a BCYF-sponsored website, and it was not. They are run by the nonprofit partners, and really the concern was just the liability that it put on the city as someone who may look to represent the city, but they're their own separate 501c3 nonprofit. So
Yeah.
the message was, in working with the law department, that these councils, we have no position to tell them they can or cannot have a website. It's just we developed some guidelines around how they can do it without making it look like they represent BCYF for the city. And a lot of the councils have been very cooperative with making sure that they just change the look of it so that it doesn't,
So
the
it doesn't
logo
look
is
like
not
a city website.
It doesn't, yes, because there was a lot of council websites that had very outdated information that didn't reflect current information. It made, and again, it was representative of our department in the city. It just didn't look good because folks were coming across them and they were, like I said, 2-3 years outdated. There was one website that had lost their domain name, and it was a site that was being used by somebody else, and it was something we wanted to rein in. So that's kind of where we're at. But like I said, again, councils have been very cooperative, but it was something that we took very seriously because we wanted to make sure that it wasn't, that everyone kind of looked good in this situation, being that stuff was out there.
Yeah. So they can still operate them as long as they don't look like city websites.
Absolutely, and we issued some guidelines around that with working again with the law department. Was extremely helpful, and just some clauses that they can put on the website just to say that they're an independent 501c3 and not representative of BCYF and things like that, just to make sure that folks know that it's a separate entity and it's not the City of Boston operating that website. So they're very much free now that we've kind of got some guidelines in place to do that.
No, just to add that one of my goals is to hopefully start bringing the council presidents in to have sessions with me more frequently.
Yeah.
So that we can begin to discuss these kind of issues as they rise up, and we can create some common language around them and common practices. I think that one of the things that happens too is, as Councilor Lennon stated too, a lot of them don't even come together. And sometimes there are two sites in one neighborhood, and yet the councils don't even talk to each other and are serving the same pool of kids. Imagine if we end up kind of being the convener, the connector, and the facilitator on how they can collaborate with one another and really have a much deeper impact on the number of kids that they go to. I mean, a great example is Rosendale itself. You have the Muni on one side, the Menino, and the Flaherty in the middle, right? All operating with different kind of councils doing their own things, but yet I can see one kid from that neighborhood hitting all three locations.
Yeah.
And if they end up communicating a little bit better, I think the outcomes will be better. And I think that by having sort of these commissioner sessions happening more frequently, we can discuss websites, we can talk about practices, we can talk about even development opportunities for ourselves. How do we become stronger council boards, and that kind of overall help support what we're trying to do, so that the stronger councils can support some of the weaker councils around how do you do fundraising, how do you do those kind of community connections, how do you sort of, or how do we take your programming and replicate it at some of the other sites if it's having a big impact in one area. So hopefully that's going to be my goal, so that hopefully we don't find ourselves in these kind of conversations, because hopefully they'll help frame a little bit about what the language will be in the future.
It makes sense, yeah. And Michael, if we can talk a little bit about your structures, you went through it a little bit. So you have 35 structures that you guys are responsible for. Public, not public. Used to be real property when I started here.
Public
property
facilities.
property management. They don't have a role in your 35 facilities. You have your own property management team.
We have some facility folks, but property management's still very much involved with our buildings and the upkeep. You know, we have a very small facilities team, facilities manager and 2 facilities folks, and then
Or
the
to
2
just
aquatics
identify
folks.
problems, and then the problems get chopped up.
Right, and
to
we either
property
bring a
management.
vendor in if needed, or work with property management around a repair if it rises to a level beyond what we can internally handle.
Yeah, because the excuse me, the outside contracts that you were talking about, 1.5 million or 1.6 million, whatever it is, if that's all maintenance within those buildings, that seems kind of low to me. So a lot of that probably has to go to capital improvements when you're talking boilers and roofs or anything like that.
Yeah, they're still very much involved with our facility repairs, but we do use a lot of vendors outside, so that's why a lot of that cost is there too. Like you said, I mean, 35 facilities plus the couple of the consolidated, we're more around like 40, and again, it's just, you know, to keep the buildings in good shape and make sure that issues are dealt with, especially with 17 pools. Stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
So.
And the schools handle their own buildings. And do you guys pay? Excuse me. Do you guys pay rent to the schools, or is that just a?
No, it's kind of just an in-kind shared space. All of our facilities issues, you know, obviously our facilities folks work very close with BPS, but we report a facilities issue to the principal and work with the custodians and BPS facilities to handle anything at our school sites.
Okay. And I noticed the North End is in talks about a new facility. I'd like to get in line. I could think of a spot in Dorchester that could use one, but to jump on what Council Linehan was talking about, spaces that incorporate the whole community, spaces for seniors to be able to. I want to build an indoor turf facility that has rooms, you know, your gym and everything, a real facility where walking tracks, that's what our seniors can be doing. That's what our tots can be doing, playing in the wintertime. 2 years ago, we had 10 feet of snow, and everybody was in the house. If we had covered turf facilities, we could be, you know, the whole community could be going down there. So in my dream, in Dorchester, we have a covered turf facility that has a track and has a gym and has a pool. Maybe that's going to continue to be a dream, but that's what I'm going to advocate for. Thank you, gentlemen. Chris, good to see you. Michael and William, thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Councils, has there been any work to connect some of the councils or the community centers that are geographically so far apart and do some sort of exchange programs where there are some social activities both with the kids and the families, perhaps with the seniors?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that just spoke a little bit on it. It's one of the things I asked when I came in. I think that just like BPS has been in transition, we've been in transition, and Chris did a lot to try to do this at the same time, still doing some of his old functions in his old job. And I think that my goal is to really look at trying to bring them in and look at what can we be doing together versus, you know what I mean, operating sort of in these silos,
these little silos.
sort of silo formats. I mean, I don't believe in silos. I've been in, I grew up in Eggleston Square, but I've, luckily that when I took this professional career to become a youth worker, I was concerned to serve all the children of Boston. So wherever that took me, Mattapan, it took me to South Boston during the time that the suicides were happening back in the late 90s. I was willing to go anywhere because I know that every child deserves a caring, consistent adult. So the idea is hopefully to bring these councils together and have this sort of open conversation about what can we be doing better, and how do we kind of get there together, so that, because I think that there are great people who have their hearts are in the right place. They are definitely passionate about the work that they do, but I think that sometimes that's what happens. They don't realize what the other one is doing, and it's time to kind of bring them around the table and start having those conversations. And I'm hoping that I would love to start it first with the council presidents, because I think that, you know, they have some weight, and then hopefully that when I begin to do my round robins and visit some of these head councils, we already know what the structure of the agenda is, so that it'd be one that be productive, not just busy talk, but really a real productive talk about progress moving forward.
Well, and it doesn't need to be fancy.
Yeah.
It can be the movie nights are shared experiences. The spaghetti supper are shared experiences. You know, from West Roxbury to East Boston, Charlestown to High Park. You know, whatever the cross the city movements we can make, but to really connect kids that maybe don't share much time together with one another, and families that don't share much time together.
I strongly believe that our centers should be the bridges that connect communities. And the reason I say that is that in my lifetime, I learned how to swim in the Hennigan. And I might be dating myself, okay, because I am an old man. But I learned how to swim in the Hennigan in the late 70s. But I remember going to the Curtis Hall and being chased away because that wasn't supposed to be my community center. And that was the reality. And I always said that whenever I got into this kind of field of work, that I want to make sure that we create bridges and we kind of connect kids, because it's easy to see a kid who lives in Dorchester today. But if it's their family's facing a housing crunch and they have to move to Mattapan because the rent is cheaper, what I would love to do is make sure that there's consistency if they end up going to the Mildred, the Galvin, or the Mattahunt, that they're going to see the same service there. So equity has to be across the board too as well in those cases.
Very good. The street worker program, do we have a count on how many kids have been engaged, how many youth are engaged in that?
Yeah, it's the exact numbers I don't have in front of me, but I know that the caseload, actually we should have the engagement numbers. We'll get them to you.
And is it trending up or down?
It's actually, it's trending up.
Okay, because a lot of the other services seem to be trending down over time. So, and I don't know if that's, and I know the conversation happened a little bit earlier during this hearing, but is that because we're not collecting the data or the counts? Because some of the, for example, the pool visits is down maybe about half, but are we maybe just missing the scanning of the membership card at entry? Because I think the pools are being used. I see them being used.
You know what? I think that, we finally got a grasp of that bus track system. It was a new system that was implemented, and I think that as we've gotten comfortable with the bus track system, it's registering better. And so the numbers might be a little bit skewed. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable with the numbers that we're seeing now. As far as the street worker engagement goes, the numbers are trending up, not only in engagements, but also mediations and interventions. And I'll get you the exact numbers because, I think Sean and his staff have really, I think, done a tremendous job, I think, in terms of capturing the data as we started to move more towards the system and not rely so much on pen and paper.
And then just a quick comment about the swimming piece. I'd love to see swimming a graduation requirement in the city of Boston, because I think our kids need to learn how to swim for personal safety. The Mayor's Food Security Action Plan is listed as part of one of your external funds. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the plan, how it fits in the BCYF family, and sort of where is that money coming from, and what can we expect to see happening with it?
I'm sorry, Council. Which part are you referring to?
So it's page in our. Well, I've got a couple packets here. In our packet today, it's on page 2. Mayor's Food Security Action Plan. For 17, we have an appropriation of $59,619, and I think it was on page 19 in the budget book, the big book.
Okay, because food services falls under our budget through the food initiative, Boston Food Initiative. So I'm assuming that's relative to their program. They fall under Health and Human Services as well, and because it's such a small department, they sit on our budget.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
I think that's what that's referring to.
Okay, very good. I'll do some offline digging for that then. Well, thank you all, and thank you, Chairman Siomo.
Thank you. Council Presley.
Thank you.
To Chris, you've been a stabilizing anchor, always so accessible, and just appreciate your many years long commitment to the city and to our youth.
Thank you.
So I'll just hop around a little bit. Many of my questions relative to status of Street Safe, Tiny Tots, our efforts for seniors, whether or not we're doing trauma trainings, and the status of the administrative coordinators have already been answered. But I did want to ask, just get clarity on a couple of things. So I want to thank you for this being the second cycle that we're doing a youth participatory budget, and just wanted to better understand what is the status of that. So since we are having a youth-led process here, have those investments been made, and what were those directives, sort of that roadmap given by our youth, and what is the status of that?
That would be more Jerry Thunder.
Well, and Council, I know that at 3 o'clock we have the DYE, Department of Youth Engagement, and they will be able to speak. That's one of their programs specifically.
Okay.
It provides us capital money, but at 3 o'clock, I know Sherry Davis.
Yeah, we don't want to steal her thunder.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to. She's excited about it, and we're excited about it.
I'll table the question.
Okay.
You can text her if you want and make sure she comes ready to talk about it. Okay?
She'll be ready. Believe me.
Okay. All right. Very good. Could you tell me how many of our BCYF facilities are school-based?
I think it's 14. Don't quote me. I might be off one, but I think it's 14.
Okay. All right. And then, given the accessibility of our centers, and to Councilor McCarthy's point earlier, could you just speak a little bit about if people were looking to use the facility either for educational programming, civic engagement, or for an event? What is that process? I mean, I can tell you there are so many incredible community partners, curriculum that we've been trying to get into spaces that has been very challenging. Boston Public Schools, more specifically, it's taken us a while to get programming in there around human trafficking and just, many things that we want to inform our youth about. So if there are any, good programming, that's sort of, looking for a space with which to meet young people where they are, how do they go about partnering with BCYF? And then just for residents who might be looking to host a meeting or an event, is there a rental fee? Are the facilities, open in that way to anyone? Is there any criteria?
Well, I mean, I think in the time that I've been here, I've gotten a couple requests, and I know that when I turn to these two men on my side, no one's ever been denied. And especially if we know the organization and we know their credibility within their community, of course, no one's going to be turned away. So it's a conversation that we will have with the administrative coordinators about how do they make the space available, if the space is available. One thing we would want to do also is just shoo away 100 kids if they're doing the basketball program or whatever the situation may be.
And is there a cost attributed to them using the space?
So, Council, it would depend on if and I spent some time, and a lot of our folks have spent time at sites. It would really be case-by-case basis. If it's a nonprofit and they're not charging kids and they're just offering a service, then we would not expect any fees to be associated with that. And I'm talking, again, during our normal operating hours. If it's a group who's coming in and the kids are being charged a fee for the participation in the program and they're charging a fee, then we only feel it's necessary to charge a rental fee to the fact that they're getting the space and they're going to be charging their users. Another thing that goes into it is it open to all of our kids and our youth to participate in it? That's
so it is a case-by-case scenario.
It's very much a case-by-case.
So is it a sliding scale in terms of what the cost could be to rent if you were doing something independent but using the facility?
So like I said, it would be very, and it's very subjective. I mean, it's very it's the type of group, if they're charging, how long they need it, when they need it.
Can we streamline that? Because I just want to say, I mean, I appreciate the role that you all play in building and preserving community. And one of the challenges that we find is just that in order for people to build community, they have to be able to come together. And there are so few spaces that can accommodate that. So I would love it if we could streamline that, and happy to work with you on that, and just make sure, our neighbors and residents that are civically engaged and just need a space know how to go about that, where to direct their queries to.
Yeah, and as the commissioner noted, I mean, he wants to be, he mentioned the center of partnerships. We want those partnerships, and we're very open to other city departments and other nonprofits. I mean, a lot of our centers have great relationships with other nonprofits in their communities that they work very closely together, and those things are happening on a daily basis where folks are getting the use of space. I think the only time we run into some issues where someone may want a specific time, a specific date,
Okay,
it
you just have a conflict.
it conflicts with existing
Okay.
programming, and we may know that from the discussions with them that they may be charging kids, and then that, like I said, again, we offer space to community groups and nonprofits free of charge. It's happening on a daily basis.
Okay,
But
all right, fair enough.
And I think that sometimes the struggle is also that, you get the BPS factor. So people will see the BCYF logo outside of BPS site, and then understands that's another sort of hurdle you have to jump, because sometimes it falls upon BPS to kind of make that okay or make that assumption. So.
Okay. All right, so moving on. I wanted to just explore a little bit what you're doing in terms of youth-specific and responsive programming. So, obviously my drum bang is on girls, and, I'm not worried about that because shout out to Erica Butler. They are in very good hands, and I know that there's a lot happening in that space in terms of meeting the needs of older teens and girls, diversifying programming, equity of programming, because we used to have a problem where there were things made available to boys but not to girls. So tremendous strides happening in that space, and I thank you for that. But I'm specifically, in addition to that, want to know if we're doing anything that is specific and responsive to our LGBT teens, trans teens, young people who receive special education services. I mean, we hear so much from parents that they're struggling to find venues where they can take an autistic child. They had to create their own day to visit Santa, because if they just went to a usual place, people wouldn't understand sort of how their children are expressing. So could you just speak to that?
Sure. And I think it speaks to, to take a step back where you're just talking about partnerships. It's important for us to partner with those agencies and organizations that provide access to all those programs you described. For example, I was at one of our community centers this past weekend on Saturday, and at the Muni in Hyde Park, and talking about the issue around autistic youth and autistic families, and we partner with a great program that provides a wonderful autistic program there, and at a number of our other sites as well. And so it's important for us to ensure that there's access to spaces. And I think as Mike was alluding to, is that for us, it's really not about trying to generate revenue. It's trying to provide some quality programming for the families holistically.
Okay. And so it's just about being more intentional about that. So
yes.
Certainly if there are partners that we're working in any of those spaces that we think that could provide helpful curriculum or programming, then we should refer them to you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I did want to inquire about, I'm very intrigued about this Youth Ventures project, this entrepreneurial programming that you're offering youth, where they're able to take an idea from concept to execution. I just wanted to know, how many businesses did we jumpstart? How many mini moguls were we able to create with that program being brought online?
Wow, that program is been amazing. First of all, I think the partnership has really proven to be quite fruitful. We've had 21 of our community centers who all have teams doing some social entrepreneurship program.
Okay.
And it's been a year-long project, a year-long program. In fact, on June 9th, we will have the final pitch for 4 of the top teams, so to speak, and they'll have an opportunity to get $10,000 to do a summer program, a summer project. So, beyond the mentorship and the skills that they've been able to build, it's just been phenomenal that we've been able to engage youth and young adults.
Well, Chris, will you just make sure that all of our offices
Absolutely.
are aware of when that pitch is happening?
Absolutely.
And we can try to get there,
Yeah.
to encourage and support these young people.
We definitely will.
Okay. All right. I think, I want to be mindful of the time. I think I got through everything I needed to. So one big selfish plug, I am a cornhole champion. So if you do decide to have anything like that, you can count on me.
Cornhole?
Yes. All right.
Serious?
Yeah.
Thank you. Tito Jackson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. My cornhole skills are not that good. So I want to welcome Will Morales as commissioner. You've done a great deal of work in the Eggleston area and really helped transform that area, which was a hotspot in a city not that long ago. And one, by stabilizing the Y and ensuring that a Y that was about to close, that they actually had trust in your leadership to continue to keep it open and really have the backs of that neighborhood and the community. So it's really good that you're here, and you're lucky because you're new. So if I were you, all of my answers would be like, I'm new, I don't know anything. That's what I would say. But
but these guys do a great job.
Exactly. No. And Chris, I want to thank you for your years of service to the city of Boston. You have done an exemplary job as an advocate for young people and families, and unsung hero. You don't, you're not into the Madison Avenue glossy piece. You go to work every day and get the job done. So I'm really thankful that you're still there and you're able to lean that the commissioner's able to lean on you. So I guess. First, a couple of questions around your vendor contracts, and I pulled you aside, and you gave me the right answer. I'm new, I don't know. So that's a very good answer that will work until the next time we're here at this this time of year. So your grant program has you pay your vendors as a reimbursement, so I find that to be very burdensome. For small organizations. So one, they have to bid to get in the mix. And then two, from an administrative perspective, it's pretty stressful to have to, on a quarterly basis, or I don't know how often you pay them, for that to be, that transaction to happen. That seems to me to be burdensome on many of these really effective organizations, but organizations that do really good direct service, but the administrative piece is burdensome. Many of our other departments, when there's a grant that's pushed out, it's pushed out as a lump sum. What is the process to change the manner in which those dollars are actually allocated and to move it from a reimbursement to a lump sum?
So yes, Council. So I know in the past some of them have been done that way, but it's really been from auditing that they've asked us to invoice, and I think it allows us to be a little bit more transparent as to how the money's being spent, and also that they can front load we front them some of the money, taking into consideration some of those costs you talked about. So there is a certain percentage, I can't remember off the top of my head, that they can get up front, and then they invoice us on, I think it's determining to them during the fiscal year, but I think could be monthly if they want it to be, and we try to work with them, and they just show us where they spent the money, and we try to reimburse them as quickly as possible on an invoice basis, which is how we handle a lot of our grants. And again, I think a lot of our grants are handled that way, where it's just, and like I said, again, we worked with the auditing office, and they advise us that that's the way we should be handling those grants.
So the issue I have is the Office of Workforce Development doesn't do it that way, right? So what they do is, so the question in this regard, it's a 501c3. It's actually regulated at the state level. The question is if these are organizations that we have trust in, because we're essentially spoon feeding folks, and so if they're organizations that we're not feeling that great about, I don't know that we should be doing business with them. So I think the issue is for organizations that are doing really great work in the community. When we think about nonprofits, what people look at is their administrative spend, and as a grantor, I think it is burdensome for us to be increasing their administrative spend as well as percentage. So I would like your department to think about that, and then from a cash flow perspective, if you're billing or essentially giving paperwork in on a monthly basis, what's your turnaround on that monthly
I think it varies. We could get back to you on that on roughly what that takes. But again, even it's not a matter of, they're getting money because they are great agencies and we believe in what they're doing. So that's the reason why that money is going to them. But even with our own site councils, who we also have a lot of trust in, it's just that's the way we handle it with them as well. It's just, consistency across the board. That's kind of how we handle the grants. And again, it's more guidance and things from auditing, and we kind of take their lead on how we should be, making sure that the city and the money's being spent in the way that they see fit. So we can definitely, look into it. I know exactly what you're referring to, but consistency-wise, that's kind of how we handle them all right now. But I can get back to you on an answer on roughly how quickly we're turning those around.
And I would ask that you reach out to your peers at the Office of Workforce Development. And again, the issue here is that either this is an organization that we believe in, and we know that they're going to use those dollars in a responsible manner, or they're not. And so I think there's a kind of a binary component there. I think Councilor McCarthy actually did bring up some good points relative to traditional young people. I first got hired in BCYF when I was 14 as a peer leader. And I was not getting into trouble. So I think programs that actually are directed at broad swath of young people do need to be increased. And Commissioner, one of the ideas I jotted down is, I think if it's the Boston Center for Youth and Families, there should be a youth advisory board for you. Mm-hmm. And I know you've always kept it real and had connections with young people. I think that would be a really good idea for you in that space. I would say I am very troubled by hearing that directors of rec centers would be taken out of the union. That would be a factor in thinking about whether I vote, how I vote on a budget such as this. I in fact, your budget to me is always too lean, as Councilor Linehan said. You guys come here with a 0.53% increase. The police came here with a 7.1% increase. And I would conjecture, if I gave you a 3% increase, that we could cut off some of their overtime, because you would be able to serve more young people and get on a proactive side rather than on a reactive side. So I think, really when I see a budget that's 0.53% increase for the Center for Youth and Families, to me, some of the most valuable webs that we have in the city, I feel this is an anemic increase relative to what's going on. Street worker program, what is the program budget for street workers?
We have on the operating city operating budget.
Yeah,
it's we don't separate it out.
Okay.
In terms of we don't separate it out.
Okay.
In terms of street worker, there's a $3.1 million
Okay.
budget that came over through Street Safe.
Okay.
And then we have an additional 30 staff that are on the city's operating budget.
Okay. So how many people came with the Street Safe?
17.
17. What is do they have a programming budget?
Do the street workers have a programming budget?
Yes.
So the street workers don't do programs.
So the reason why, and you know why I asked you this, but
so that we have through our foundation raise additional funds externally. Yeah. But the street workers do not do program, and they steer youth into existing programs. So the programs that we rely on are the programs that we operate at our community centers.
But the reason why I ask you this question, I do it every single year, is simply this. You have individuals who aren't what's the average salary?
About $35,000, I think, is okay. Average.
So we just had an interesting statistic. 50% of people in the city of Boston make $35,000 or less. But then another statistic says that you need $127,000 to live here, right? And so you have individuals who do stuff that we don't do, who are dealing with individuals who have guns on them and who have killed people. And we're paying them $35,000 a year to be in close proximity of those individuals for 8 hours a day. And many of them, and they're not going to say it on record, they're taking money out of their pocket to buy food for these individuals. to help them out with getting their license back. So we have this this spend on human capital, but we're not giving them the tools that they need. And in fact, we're putting them in a really, in all honesty, dangerous position. And so I think your budget needs to really reflect that these individuals need additional resources, not only programmatic resources where you're saying, hey, go down and see so-and-so, but someone needs to eat right now today. And many of the street workers I talked to said, hey, you know what? They come see me if I buy pizza. And one of the pieces that we also should have a connection with is that your department should be, and I know Councilor Sabi George has been dealing with it on a Boston public school side. Most of these young men are homeless. They're couch surfing, right? And we think they're big, tough guys or whatever. They don't have a place to lay their head. And their instability is connected there. So a couple things. One, the Department of Neighborhood Development should be liaising with you guys around these issues. HUD has recently given some direction around people who have quarries and public housing. And I think there should be a connection there. But two, the budget, they need more. And they need to be able to do what individuals need when they need it. And I know when people speak about issues of addiction, in the same way, when someone's addicted, they need a bed right then. They don't need it 2 weeks from now, but they need it right then. If their license, any of the documentation, that the birth certificate from City Hall, they need those things. And so $35,000 a year, the other people in the city that we pay to deal with folks in this space, they make $110,000 a year, and they're called police officers. And so I find it really hard to deal with that fact that we're paying, that we have these individuals who aren't making a really small amount of money in that space. What type of, so we know that other folks deal with trauma. Many of these folks are at crime scenes and they see stuff that the human brain not supposed to see. What type of trauma support do street workers get?
We have a licensed social worker who's on duty and works out of our office, and we partner strategically with some of the community health centers in the city to support our staff. But Sean and his senior street workers and senior violence interrupters are also there to provide counseling support. We try as much as possible to provide, those opportunities for our staff to be able to, get some mental health time and mental health support. And obviously, always make them aware of the employment assistance program that exists.
Yeah. And that's the other piece for me. Even though guys might, especially that whole mail, the box that we put our, well, you know what? Seeing people hurt, maimed, and killed does something to individuals. And many of the individuals have done amazing things with their lives in terms of turning their lives around. But again, trauma doesn't just go away. And it's something that we have to even guys have to process process this information. Also, I guess thank you so much. And you weren't here. We've had this for the tracking system. Amen. Because I've asked for this for 5 years, and we finally do have a tracking system. Thank you so much. What does it track? Is this the same tracking system that came from Street Safe? Did that move over? And is it outcome based components? And we realize, and there's also a security component here relative to the information shared, and also the security of individuals who are doing this work, being able to be around individuals and not have to share information with law enforcement at all times. in a way that will keep them safe.
Yeah. So the tracking system, you know, Sean and the development team worked closely with Social Solutions to adapt something that meets the needs of BCYF. So this system didn't come over with Street Safe because Street Safe had a different mission. And, you know, we certainly took some of the things that we learned from Street Safe, but this is a system that was specifically adapted for our staff at BCYF. And, you know, more than anything, it's really tracking the human side of progress for the young men. So touch points, engagements, outcomes. Ultimately, you know, where are they at along the continuum? We do not put information in the tracking system that could potentially pose a security risk. We'll always have to be mindful of the fact that this information is foiable. So we're not putting that type of information in.
That's good. And again, these individuals do some of the most dangerous work that we have, and they don't actually carry weapons. And so the couple last pieces, I think your building should be open later during the summertime. When I was, and as Councilor Linehan said, we have those when I was a kid, things. There were parties for young people. And we live in a day and age now where so many organizations are scared of young people that we don't actually stand up as adults and say, you know what? When I used to go to the Boys and Girls Club, there were people who were much more active than anyone who's out there right now. And they actually went to the same parties that I did. And they made them figure out how to act in that setting. And so I think that's one of the things that we should think about doing relative to access for young people in the city.
Yeah, we were already in the process of expanding our teen nights from last year, and so we agree that we should be providing those healthy spaces for teenagers, and certainly have already made the steps to provide those opportunities, not only in the summertime but year round. Yeah. You know, if we don't provide those safe spaces, they'll find them themselves, and so. Yeah. You know, we're already in the process of doing that.
And I've spoken to a lot of young people who've never been to anything but a house party, and that's not healthy. And it doesn't teach people how to have healthy fun, which many of us in this room had. Again, I actually think I would love to see this budget bigger because I really would submit that increases in your budget mean decreases in violence in the city of Boston, that families are doing better, that they're connected with more resources, and that we're just a better and healthier and more proactive city rather than the reactive approach that we take and have to take relative to the law enforcement side. So I'm very confident that you will be an amazing leader over there, Commissioner Morales, and look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks, Mike and Chris.
Thank you. Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you coming year.
Likewise.
And so this will conclude the budget hearing for Boston Centers for Youth and Families, and we will take a 5-minute recess. (525) and 0527 with the Boston Centers for Youth and Families. I want to thank the Commissioner for your work. We look forward to working with you, and this hearing is now adjourned. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today we are hearing docket number 0548. For the record, my name is Sal Lamattina, and I am the District 1 City Councilor. I am the Vice Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. I am joined by my colleagues, Anissa George and Andrea Campbell. I want to remind you that this public hearing is being recorded and broadcast on Comcast 8 and RCN 82. Please silence your cell phones and other devices. We will also take public testimony, and we appreciate if you would sign in and check off the box to testify. And if you are going to testify, please state your name and address for the record. On today's hearing on docket 0548, message and order authorizing the Boston Center for Youth and Families to reestablish in accordance with General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E.5, a revolving fund to accept from the fund to maximum of $750,000 to fund fiscal year 2016 to pay salaries and benefits of employees and to purchase supplies and equipment necessary to operate the City Hall Child Care. With us today is Commissioner William Morales. Commissioner, welcome. And also Deputy of Operation Michael Saprizio. So welcome, Commissioner. So if you could just talk a little about the revolving funds.
Okay, so the purpose of these funds is the revolving funds. It's for the pay the salaries and benefits of the employees that we employ down in this building down at City Hall Child Care. And what it allows us to do is that the revenue for this fund comes from the payments that are made by the parents and children that are enrolled in the program. So what it does is it allows us to take those fees for the services we provide, and then in turn use it to further costs of the staff as well as equipment and supplies. So it really just allows us to take those funds in and use them, spend them back out in the form of salaries and benefits to the staff that work in City Hall Child Care.
Thank you. So what is the total annual cost of the City Hall Child Care program?
I believe that the expenditures in FY through the current fiscal year, it's been $370,000. In FY15, the expenditures were $523,000.
$523,000. And then the receipts. The cost of so what is the cost of the tuition, anyways?
The rates are currently, for an infant, it's $300 per week. For a toddler, it's $266, and for preschool, it is $202.
So, do the receipts of this revolving fund, do they cover the costs? The receipts from tuition?
No, they do not. It does run at a deficit.
It does.
What's that?
It runs in a deficit.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've tried to adjust fees to try to close the deficit a little bit. We just did another fee increase at I believe it was December or January, and we're looking at a couple of other ways through enrollment fees, waitlist fees, and things like that to try to help minimize that deficit as much as possible while still keeping the program affordable.
And how many children do we have in the child care program at City Hall?
So the capacity is 54, and we currently have one vacancy in infant 2, one vacancy in our toddler program, and 4 vacants in the preschool slots.
Is there a waiting list?
Yes, there is.
There is a waiting list.
Yes.
And how many are on that waiting list?
I'm not sure how many are on the waiting list. I can get you that information, but I know that we always have a running waiting list because the program's in very high demand, and it's just our capacity doesn't handle the need that there is. But I can get you the count on the wait list, and we actually just went through an exercise of revising our wait list policy too to help try to make it more accurate.
Okay. And are the benefits of employees also paid from this fund?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anissa Sabi George.
Thank you. And thank you both for being here today. What is the deficit for the Child Care Center?
I'm pretty sure currently it's about $200,000, roughly.
And where do we cover that deficit from? Where does that come from?
I think it kind of it may roll year to year, but we also sometimes use salary savings to help close it a little bit, but I think it kind of carries over year to year. It stays pretty much the same. But again, we're we're trying to move around with our fee structure and things to try to help minimize that.
Very good. And then you said with a capacity of 54, we have 6 current openings. What's the typical turnaround to fill those openings if we have a wait list?
Yep. So that was part of our practice too. We just went through a whole revamp in the procedures and how we fill the slots, because we found that obviously every day that goes by that a slot's unfilled, it adds to the deficit. So what we've done is we've centralized the waitlist policy so that our program manager at the central office handles it, which removes it from the hands of the director here. It gives her more time to do other things, as well as not have to be on the front line when it comes to filling those slots, because it's really key to minimizing the deficit is us filling those seats as quickly as possible. So what we've done also is we instituted in the waitlist policy that's posted on the website and given to people as soon as they get on the waitlist that once they accept a slot, they will begin immediately paying for that slot. In the past, they've been allowed to, well, I'm not ready yet, I'll take the slot, but I'll use it 2 or 3 months from now, and the program can't afford to do that. So consistent with other policies that other programs have, what we've done is we've informed folks through this policy that they're provided. And it's, like I said, again, posted on the website. So it's, completely transparent that as soon as they accept a slot, we expect the payments to begin. We can't leave slots open. So really, we've been working closely with the budget office to see after this year of kind of having the new policy, some new fees in place. We've also charging an annual $25 fee to be on the wait list. I think that helps keep only people who are serious about entering the program on that wait list, and it keeps it more accurate as to not just having names on there that they've gotten other options. So it allows us to keep that kind of a little bit more accurate, but also provides a small source of revenue, as well as a lot of programs institute enrollment fees. So we've instituted a small enrollment fee to help also address some of the deficits. So we're kind of working with the budget office to give it a year to see where we come if it starts to put a little bit of a dent in the deficit the program's running at. But yes, as you mentioned, filling those slots is key to trying to bring that deficit down a little bit. And we're hoping that we've put some policies and procedures in place to help make that a little bit quicker process.
And are all the children in the City Hall Child Care Program City Hall employees or City of Boston employee children?
I believe that most of them are, but not all of them. The program's open to anybody.
Oh, it's not required. Okay.
Nope. The program's open to anybody, just like any other program is. They have some subsidized slots and EEC slots as well. So I think people have interpreted it because it's in this building that you have to be a City of Boston employee, and that's not the case.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilor Andrea Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that was one of my questions about eligibility. So it's open to anybody from the city. Has there ever been a discussion or conversation about giving city employees preference for childcare here in City Hall?
I think naturally it's been the fact that I think almost every child down there is from someone who works for the city, just about. But I believe the waitlist policy, I think it's equal preference to city versus non-city. It's just naturally the case that a majority of the folks interested in the service are from either City Hall or city employees, but the only preference we give is a sibling preference. If you already have a child in the program, we give you a preference. If you have a subsequent child that wants to get into the program, but that's the only preference that we give when we're allotting spaces.
How many employees work down there?
I have to get back to you, Council, on the exact number. I think it's around 10, but I don't want to give you bad information,
Okay.
so I can definitely follow up with an exact number.
Thank you. And how much were the rates increased by? So these were recently, so the 300, 266, 202 were recently increased from what?
The rates were, I think it was a 5% increase, I believe. It was a very small. We've been hovering around a 5% increase the past couple of years. And again, it's still well below market. We've done a lot of research on the costs of other programs. And
that was my other question, is how does it compare to others?
We're still very affordable. You can ask, I'm sure if there's other folks that you know that have childcare, and you mentioned some of these rates, they'd be very, and a lot of folks that work for the city really want to get their children in here because of, again, the affordability, the quality of the program, and also the fact of having their children close and in the building is a huge benefit to folks that work in the building. But we're still very much under market rate for childcare services.
So I imagine there's a large waiting list, but we don't know the number of folks on that waiting list just now.
No, but there's always a waiting list. And I can guarantee you, like I said, I want to say the last time I checked, there may have been around 50, But again, I think the waitlist fee will help us because I think a lot of that number may have been through people that have found alternate arrangements that just haven't notified us because we never really reviewed the list. But now with annual notices going out saying that, there's a $25 fee. If we don't receive the fee, you'll be removed from the wait list within a certain amount of time will help us get a more accurate number than just saying 50 and it's folks who have no intentions of coming into the program. So we're trying to find ways to make that list more accurate as well.
And then my last question, I imagine childcare, as most know, is very, very important. Has there been any discussion about including something in the budget to increase the capacity of the childcare operation downstairs to alleviate the waiting lists and also to accommodate more city employees? I mean, this is a conversation we have, even encouraging private sector employees, other employers to have childcare for parents.
Yeah, and I know that's very important to the mayor as well. And I know that folks have reached out to us to inquire about how many folks we can accommodate and things like that. I think what it comes down to right now is we're at the max because of due to number one, the space, and number two, the staff ratios. So we're kind of really trying to keep, we try to keep is because like you said, we want to make sure that we're accommodating as many folks as possible because I know a lot of folks are reliant upon this service. So we try to keep it as as at capacity as possible while also keeping in mind the ratios, which we want to make sure that we abide by. And again, it's just overall space too and the number of kids that they can accommodate in each classroom. So
it's not merely resources and money, it's also accommodations and capital space. Okay, yes. This is very helpful. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Brazil, just a quick question. Why isn't that daycare just for City of Boston employees? Is there a reason why?
Well, we get state funding. I mean, we get EEC. So I'm pretty sure that we have to remain. And, I think that it's a great service for City of Boston employees, but I think really any resident of the City of Boston should be entitled to take advantage of those services where there's a lot of residents, I'm sure, that work downtown, maybe not in the building, but that, we'd be happy to accommodate if they request the services. But I think it's probably tied to the fact that we do get some vouchers and things like that through funding that's beyond the city.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Well, this will conclude docket number 0548, revolving fund. Thank you for being here today, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mrs. Brazil, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.